Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. So with excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, Patrick Martin. Are you feeling unstoppable today?
Unstoppable.
Yeah, man.
100%.
You had an accident recently.
Yeah, I almost fell in a vat of grapes. Out in Sonoma.
How long ago was that?
It'd be 2 weeks this Friday. I cracked a couple ribs and bruised my spleen.
And you're here this morning, man. I cannot say thank you enough. I can see that you're still in pain. I just can't say thank you enough for taking the time to join us this morning.
I'm happy to be here.
So it's a pleasure to have you here. So we're talking to Patrick Martin. He is the founder and pitmaster at Martin's Barbecue Joint. And I cannot wait to dive into your story. But let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
I tell all my guys that a lot of people get caught up worrying about the big things, and it really is not about that. It's about the little things. So every day, if you approach your life and restaurant and dotting every I and crossing every T, the big things take care of themselves. So the details, being super anal on the details is what matters to success.
What is your trick for staying focused on the little things and not letting the big things kind of take you off course?
Well, just because, like I said, because the big things take you off course because you didn't mind the little things.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the big things don't matter, but I don't pay attention to, I care about if one of my crew wrecks a catering van or, messes up a piece of equipment. I don't care about that. If you, serve my food in a way that's not the way I want it served, that's where it's a problem. The straw wrapper on the floor way over there that the kid tore off and it's under the chair.
And you just walk past it.
And an employee walks past it, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that's systemic cancer that begins to form.
That's culture. That's reality.
That's culture. And that's reality.
Absolutely. I love it, man. A great way to get this thing started. Where does it make sense to start sharing your story? I know that you didn't get right into the restaurant industry. I actually love when I have people on the show that don't have 20 years of experience working in restaurants before opening their own restaurant, because you get that clean slate, that new perspective, and you do things differently. You don't have
I'm glad
habits, right?
That's 100%. Well, it's not about, it is about bad habits or good habits, I suppose, but real barbecue joints run out. And in the restaurant business, I learned this after opening as I started hiring people from other restaurants, is that there's a mantra out there to never run out of food because you're going to miss a sale. And that's not what real barbecue joints do. And so I cook so much every day, and that's it. I make everything every day. The freaking salad dressings on our few salads that we have. Everything, so I don't buy anything in. I don't have a freezer. I don't have a microwave in any store. So that was the biggest thing. If I had worked in the restaurant business, that probably would have been beat in my head, and I probably would have ended up, unbeknownst to myself, bastardizing my own brand.
Exactly.
Because that's how I would have been taught.
Right. So when did you get into barbecue? How did you end up in 2006 opening Martin's Barbecue?
So way back, I was like a lot of boys. I had very strong John Wayne-esque men in my family, my uncles, my granddads, and all that, and they changed their own oil, and we didn't have gas grills. We had a chimney starter, and our family's from Corinth, Mississippi, right in the northeast corner, and I think they used those chimney starters, if I'm not mistaken, because the guy that's got the patent on them is from Corinth. I remember my granddad, my Paul King, telling me that, but whether that's truth or not, he wasn't a liar, but I think I remember that right. But anyway, so I remember the first time my dad asked me to light the fire on the grill. My family were not barbecue people, but we ate a lot of barbecue. I was born in Memphis. Okay. And our family farm is 60-odd miles from Memphis. We left Memphis when I was little and moved up to, my dad took a job in New York. So we would come home every summer, and in the fall we got a lot, all the Yom Kippur and all the 3- and 4-day weekend holidays, and then of course Christmas we would come home for the whole time. And so then my granddad died, and when I was right after going into high school, and we ended up moving home. So during high school, so it was an easy transition because I'd already had all my friends dads graduated with my dad from high school, and so it was actually pretty smooth. And I just was cooking. You know, when Dad had me light that fire, it was a big deal to me. It was like, I'm giving you this responsibility. And that's the thing, as I've thought about my life, just going back, what really kind of, no pun intended, lit the fire was that time on the deck. And I bought the Thrill that when I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, I bought Thrill of the Grill by Chris Schlesinger and Doc Willoughby. And, you know, going through that book, I was really into grilling and trying to grill other things besides burgers and steaks, because that's all anybody ever, you know what I'm saying? And there was a chapter in there about him and his dad, Chris's dad, who I've not had the pleasure of ever meeting. I hope I do one day, but cooking whole hog in Virginia Beach when he was a kid. And so anyway, jump ahead, we moved back home. I graduate high school. I go up about 45 minutes north to this little Church of Christ, this little Christian university. And I was going to attempt to walk on and play basketball there. And because my whole family went, like my entire family went to Mississippi State.
Okay.
They're all Bulldogs.
Okay.
And I wanted to go to Mississippi State, but, you know, just the hint of being able to maybe keep playing basketball, that's what I wanted to do. So anyway, I went up there, and I was close where I could drive home. But the first few days I was there, I was like, you know, every week I ate barbecue, at least once a week. And there were a lot of barbecue joints in this little bitty town. It's in Henderson, Tennessee, in West Tennessee. And I remember walking into Thomas & Webb Barbecue, and this man was sitting there, and he said, you know, what do you want? I said, I want a pork sandwich. He asked me where I wanted it from. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, do you want some ham? You want lean meat, fat meat, this, that? And I said, I just, you know, right down the middle. Slaw, you know. So he turned to the right and lifted up this cardboard. And, I mean, man, behind him there was this hog by the cash register that he had taken off the pit. And he just pulled it and made the sandwich right in front of you. And you grabbed a bag of chips over here and got a Coke out of the you know, reach in. But that blew me away. That really set it in stone. I was like, I have got to learn how to do that. And it was just so big and daunting, like a whole animal, you know, and like, you know, I'd been cooking ribs and all that and shoulders and butts, and but a whole hog was it. So anyway, I developed pretty quickly a deep relationship with Mr. Harold, and he is who mentored me, and
this is Harold Thomas you're talking about Harold. Right now, who was at the window, who served you that day.
That's right. Yeah, he was a kind gentleman. But he would let me come down, and he would answer any question. He had no secrets, which is also something that I've adopted. I think people have secrets or assholes, which we'll get into later, is like the paying it forward part of it. But he was an open book, and he shared every single thing with me. He let me hang around the pits, and, you know, I never got paid. I just worked in there. But
see, that is huge, and that is something that Restaurant Unstoppable hinges on, this idea that we're better when we take that knowledge and we pay. We have an obligation. We as society, as humanity, we are where we are because of that ability to pay it forward, to share that information.
And unfortunately, in barbecue, there's this big thing like my secret rub or my secret sauce. I can tell you right now, it's all a crock of crap.
It's not. Can you execute every day?
I don't care. There's not a sauce recipe or a cooking style. There's not like. So anyway, you know, I cooked my first hog when I was a freshman in college. So that was 1990, and you know, I remember. My roommate was the president's son, and they were building a new gym, and he stole the bricks from the new bricks that were going on, and we went back to Corinth, and we cooked a hog. I got my hogs from Mr. Harold. They were actually they came in cut in half. I remember being like, oh crap, what do I do? And he was like, oh, you know, just lay them side by side. It's all right, you know, go ahead and cook them. So that was the first time I cooked a hog, and I just did that for 4 years and ended up transferring to Nashville. Actually, they kicked me out for drinking beer. I told the truth, though. And I ended up there twice, and I ended up transferring to Nashville to go to Lipscomb here. And I was, the whole time, every year, I was doing all like the hay rides for the fraternities and, you know, sororities and maybe a couple business things. You know, I'd go out and build a block pit and cook. And so that's how it got going. I was you know, when we left Memphis because my dad was a proprietary government bond trader, fixed income. And so I came up in that world in the commodities and, you know, the Chicago Board of Trade and pricing and economics and blah, blah, blah. I didn't learn a daggum thing about finance, which is a misnomer. A lot of people think because I worked in that industry that I had a head start.
I
on
was
finance.
curious if that would be something
I
that
didn't learn a dead No, I didn't. Those were all like the people who were way smarter than me that were figuring out transactions. But
so what were you doing all this time when you're in this vertical of finance and you're selling bonds or trading bonds?
I traded. Joined the trading desk first. I took a job with Nations Bank in Charlotte because I didn't want to ever live up north again. Nothing against that. It just wasn't my
From
culture.
New Hampshire, I get it. It's cold.
Yeah, it's cold. And so that was the only place I could get a job with what we call a primary dealer, and there were only 8. And so all the rest were based in New York, and the other options were London and Tokyo, and I definitely wasn't doing that. So I took a job over there on their corporate bond trading desk, and again, the whole time I'm continuing to cook. I'm cooking for our trading desk. I'm cooking for our capital markets group. I went up and cooked at the Board of Trade, like just wherever I could cook. On weekends, I was living over there by myself, and so I didn't have really any friends the first few months, and so on Saturdays I would get up and drive to Eastern North Carolina. I'd drive to Lexington, North Carolina. I would just go try barbecue and eat barbecue. And I always had it in my mind. I was like, I'm gonna when I'm 50, which I'm almost 50 now, but when I'm 50, I will have made some money and I'm gonna open up my own barbecue place. That's what I'm gonna do. Well, it didn't work out that way. I got my girlfriend pregnant. We got married, and we shouldn't have, and that was a 5.5 year mistake for both of us. She was a really good person, is a good person, but we just shouldn't have gotten married like that, and she ended up having a miscarriage. But anyway, life just didn't go the path that I had planned on it. I ended up getting remarried, and after when we got married, she was a songwriter, and so we moved to Nashville. We actually moved back. I actually moved back to Memphis first for one job with Dane Rauscher, which was a firm out of Minneapolis, and then took a job with Morgan Keegan, and they were based out of Memphis. But I worked for them in Memphis, and then moved to their Nashville office to get Heather back closer to Sony. And so now I'm in Nashville, and I left capital markets, and I had 2 uncles that had sod farms, and one of them, my Uncle Sam Coleman, outside of Florence, Alabama, Tuscumbia. I laid sod for him a lot. I could throw some sod.
Okay.
So this buddy of mine called me and named Matt Burton. He was like, hey, man, I wasn't working, and I'd made enough money that I could take off a few months and figure out. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was opening a restaurant wasn't even in my, I didn't have enough money to do that, and I was probably too scared and too intimidated. But so he asked.
I think it's also important to recognize that, a lot of people just dive in. And I mean, I think it's, you can start small, right? But I think a lot of people get in trouble because they don't recognize that they don't have enough money, right? So I think there's a little bit.
We'll get into that because I've got some serious warnings to send out.
Yeah, please. I'll let you do your
also
thing.
Paying it forward. But
yeah,
I ended up having a landscape contracting company, and I didn't even really plan to do that. Matt was like, hey, I'm doing all this utility work and putting in sewer lines and water lines and gas lines, and part of my bid is to make it all look pretty again. Yeah. And I knew how to do that. And so at the time I was like, yeah, I'll get out. And so I bought a skid steer, and one thing led to another. Anyway, another 5 years passed, and it wasn't bad money. It wasn't great money. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Yeah. I was just kind of existing.
Being responsible.
So I ended up getting divorced during that time. And when I was, one of my closest friends, Brian Chandler, moved in my house with me. And that's when I really started cooking. I got Julia Child's The Art of French Cooking, and I started wondering, what is braising?
Yeah.
So this is like 1998 or 9, okay. Whatever. And I'm like, what is braising? And I mean, I knew what braising was, but I didn't know what braising was. Yeah. So I started kind of teaching myself these techniques, just kind of, I didn't get in and make all the sauces, but I learned how to make the mother sauces and blah, blah, blah. And that really was helpful for me because it made me understand the science of what happens when we barbecue food. I wouldn't have gained that had I not gone through and cooked classical French techniques and pan roasting and blah, blah, right? So that was a lonely time. It was a good time. I really kind of honed some things, and I was obviously still cooking a lot of barbecue every weekend to kind of, I would hang out with my buddies, and I was the guy who was cooking, you know, and so, and that's with how many thousands of people are doing that this weekend, you know what I mean, throughout the country.
But that's the right reasons, you know, you're getting into it for the love of the thing, right? And I think that's why you should get into the industry, for whatever the thing is, whatever for you, that's baking pies, or if it's barbecuing whole hogs. Like, it's the love of the thing, it's the love of the camaraderie, the sharing that with other people. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what is it exactly that you think that you are drawn to? Like, what is the thing that the magnet
people who cook for a living, or not for a living, but people who cook a lot, enjoy food beyond a standpoint of sustenance, which is important. We're only here on this earth for a short amount of time. Why do you want to eat something just so you're not hungry anymore? That's stupid. Enjoy it. If you can't enjoy it, then, you know, that's your fault. But the reason I think we all get into it is because I like making you happy.
Yes.
Like I'm not trying. There are some people who there is ego involved, especially with, you know, unfortunately, that's one of the byproducts of competition barbecue is you come in there and it's just like, I'm the best. I'm the best. There is no freaking best. Nobody's the best. There's no best anything.
Yeah.
Right. So you're only competing against yourself ever. So I just want to cook this whole chicken on this pit, and you eat it, and I see that you enjoyed it. That's what's filling my spot, right? So that's what it really all was about. And then that just that went on for 5 years, and around 06, it was the spring. And I had a long-time employee who's still close. He's he is absolutely like family to me, Martin Garcia. And we flipped a trailer. And that was kind of the omen for me. That was like the bellwether. It was like, okay, this is
still while you're doing the landscaping business.
Yeah. It was in May of 2006. Part of the we got maintenance contracts. So if you did the install on a large subdivision or whatever, you got an immediate 2-year winning bid to like mow the grass and all that. And that was like kind of the easy money that kind of helped flow and build a business up. And so we were going to cut, and he didn't lock the trailer hitch on, and literally the trailer just came plumb off and just went right up a embankment, flipped right over, big 72-inch Toro Z-turn, all that, just sandwiched it. So that was Monday morning, and this is a true story. This is a really dangerous story because it's a romantic. It's very romantic sounding, but I'm telling you, it's really, I hope nobody ever does this, what I did. But long story short, my wife was like, you need to cook. You need to get in a restaurant business. I was thinking about going to CIA, and I was like, I don't want to just be a chef. I want to be a restaurateur. So I flirted with that several times, you know, while I was doing the, you know, cooking at home. And anyway, flipping this trailer, I met with the insurance adjuster. They gave my insurance settlement for that mower and the trailer and everything was almost $18,000. By the time I was wrapped up with him, it was about 10:30 in the morning. Day was shot. I sent Martine and him home. I don't have any work to do. I got to figure out who can go cut this for me, some of my buddies who have other companies. So I went down to this little Mexican place called El Texano, and over in a little town called Nolensville, which is about, at your 5 o'clock, about 25 minutes outside of Nashville, southeast. And it was right after 11. And I walked up the stairs. It was a little tiny building, and the lights were off and all the chairs were up. And I looked at the door, and it was like open Monday 11 to 8 or whatever it said. And I was like, well, that's, you know, it's odd. Like, why aren't they open? So I walked down, and there was a mechanic underneath. And I was like, hey, are these guys open? He's like, well, I own the building, and we evicted them. They owe us 3 months rent. And so, you know, they were closed. And I was like, well, what are y'all going to do with it? And he goes, we're going to rent it out. And I literally just said, I'll take it.
Nice.
Didn't think about it. Didn't ask him how much it was. And I remember when he was walking me through that, he's like, are you serious? I go, yeah, I'm dead serious. I go, I'll take it. And I remember wanting him to shut up because I was starting to realize what I had said.
We're back, and get into that story. You said that he started telling you more. You didn't want to listen to him because you were afraid he would talk you out of it. Is that what you said?
I was afraid that I would, not him talk me out of it. I was afraid I was about to change my mind and talk myself out of it. So, you know, anyway, that's how it happened. And I went and got my grandmother was a teller at the old Bank of Mississippi, and my papa, my dad's dad, got all of his farm loans from Bank of Mississippi, and it had changed names to Bancorp South, and I still bank with them today. And I asked my dad to find a commercial banker that he knew within Bancorp South, and I went and met with him, and I had a house, you know, and it was like valued like $150,000, and they gave me a $65,000 line of credit, and I was like, wow, you know, and I went and bought tools. I got the DeWalt whole skill set, you know, skill saw and drill and all that, and I literally got. I mean, I was pretty good with stuff because the stuff we were doing in the contracting was hardscapes. We were doing like stone patios and decks and stuff. So I framed out the building, and that started in May, and I ended up hiring this guy named Bo Collier, which is another funny story, which I won't bore you with on this one because of time, but he was a drummer. He's a friend of a friend, but he was an old line cook.
Okay.
And he was he was a redneck guy. He was from Franklin, Tennessee, but he had moved to St. Thomas, and he was really into Rastafarian, and he's just an oxymoron, but he's very Eagle Scout, really intelligent. At the time, had never paid an income tax, smoked a lot of pot, you know. So I hired Bo, and Bo really taught me how to set a kitchen up and be a line cook. I owe him that. Bo is very disciplined, and there is black and white, and you do things this way, and like we change our pans and clean them out every night.
What's the biggest thing that Bo set you up for success? Like what
cleaning,
was
the organization of setting a kitchen up. Like he said, I'll do this. You know, he's just kind of a vagabond, free spirit, and and we're still close today, very close. But he said, I'll do this, but this kitchen has to be clean, tidy, and orderly, or I won't work here. And I said, man, that's fine. So, so we did it, and we ended up opening up in October of that year.
I think that's kind of a statement, though, or a testament that like we have to have more open minds, because like the picture you painted of Bo was somebody that maybe might not be the first person you might hire because of like the extracurricular things, and like maybe like paint that picture. Was he like was he put together?
Like the first minute you talked to Bo, he's so intense that you knew and he knew what he was talking about.
Okay.
And I was open with him. I was like, look, man, I can cook some barbecue, and I got my brand down, but I've never worked in a kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's what I need you to do and help me with. And he's like, fine. And he just told me this is how I want to do it. And I said, okay.
Awesome.
So
you didn't know him prior to that?
No.
Interesting.
No.
So you just
met him one time, and I hired him. It was
awesome.
literally, he was playing in a band and a drums, and there was like 10 people in this little bar in East Nashville, and I stood up, and you know, I'd had a few beers, and I was like, you know, Bo, you're my new line cook. And he goes, great. 1, 2, 1, 2, and they went right into the next song.
Nice.
And then we met outside after the set, and he was like, were you serious? I was like, yeah, man, I need a line cook. And so jump ahead, we built the place out, and you know, I did all my branding and all that stuff, and we opened in October. It was October 16th, 2006.
You mentioned earlier that you chose not to go to culinary school. What was the reason why not to go to culinary school?
I felt like I was 34 years old, and I thought I was old.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't go to freaking culinary school at 34.
Yeah.
And that really was kind of the big hang up. And also because I wanted the romantic side of like going and staging in kitchens and like, you know, doing all that. But if you do that for 3 or 4 years, you turn around, you're 38, and like, what do you have? Then you're 40. And I didn't even know enough then to know how your body gets beat up. Like, the kitchens are a young man's game.
Yeah.
And so it was a good decision. But I really wanted to be a restaurateur.
But you also didn't end up like, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary today to go to culinary school. I mean, I think you're living proof of that. If the passion's there, if the desire's there, you can pick up a book on your own. You don't need a teacher to hand you a book.
All culinary school does is give you a really good head start on the foundation of the house. You still got to build the house.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's barbecue or anything. The house that you build is going to come usually from then your experiences within a kitchen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, you don't have to. I've got plenty of friends, James Beard Award winning friends who never stepped foot in a culinary school, who are world renowned chefs now. So
I mean, I think the only other thing you could argue is that it helps connect you. I mean, it's a great if you're hungry and you have that hunger and that desire, you have that network, right? You can. But other than that, like, I'm right there with you. But back to you opening your restaurant, reflecting back at that time, not really having any experience in the industry other than your time with Harold Thomas, right? You were working.
Harold taught me how to cook barbecue, but Harold didn't teach me anything about running a business.
Okay, yeah.
Harold, I don't know if Harold ran a good business or not. We never even talked about that. And so that ended up coming about because I opened up, and man, like, kind of immediately, you know, we're 25 minutes out of town. Nolensville had like 3,000 people that live there. And in January, this guy who I'm now friends with, this guy who a lot of us are here in town are friends with, named Jim Myers, was the food critic at the Tennessean, our paper. And it was back old school food critic. Like, he had a blacked out face. You didn't know when he came in. It wasn't any of this, like, you know, sweet, cushy food critic people today, you know, where they don't ever say anything negative. And he came in and gave me a really glowing review. He busted me up on my brisket. And that's what ended up making me down the road, not immediately, but down the road, say I got to get better at my brisket. And so I ended up doing that with Adam Perry Lang, Billy Durney, Wayne Mueller, but a lot with Billy, who's one of my closest friends on the planet. And but that was later on, way later on. But you know,
I think that says a lot about your character, though, because a lot of people, when they get beat up with the critics, they take it personally. I'm sure it might have tarnished your ego a little bit, but you can choose to be angry about that.
Or I didn't even want to serve brisket. I actually wasn't. I didn't even have it on the menu, and literally the night before, October 15th, Bo said, all these Texas transient songwriters are up here. How don't you think we ought to maybe reconsider serving brisket? And I got scared. Drove to Sam's, asked them for a brisket, whole brisket. And I sat there and held it. I was like, all right, this thing's about the size of a whole shoulder. I'll just cook it for 18 hours and cook it just like a shoulder. But it was very much an afterthought. I'm a pork guy, and I just had brisket basically just so there wasn't a veto vote for some Texas person who wanted some brisket. But I didn't know. I truly didn't know, like, how important it was to Texans, you know, that brisket is this and this whole aura. It's no different than whole hog is east of the Mississippi River. But anyway, I ended up doing that, and so 06 we opened. Jim wrote a stellar review in that January, so that was about 3 odd months later and 4 months later, and man, they started coming from Nashville. A lot of the restaurant industry folks started coming, chefs and line cooks, and that summer we had lines out there was only 12 tables in place. It was 1,000 square feet.
So this is 2006, the summer of 2006?
This was summer of 7. I opened in 6, and fall of 06. Gotcha. And so we had lines out the door. When I'd run out, man, that was it. And people would be like, I'm never coming back. I drove all the way out here from Nashville, and you don't have anything. I was like, hey, you know, I'm sorry, but I didn't know any other way. I didn't know why that was. They came back, by the way.
Yeah.
They won't come back if it sucks.
But reflecting back at that time, knowing what you know now, growing as far as you've grown, not just with your business, but you as a professional, as an individual, reflecting back at that time and the things you were doing, like what were some of the things that you laugh at that you know today? Like
shutting down during the through and playing Splinter Cell on Xbox with Bo, like just to kill the time. Like we would clean it up and we'd shut down from 2 to 4:30, and you know we really only had about an hour of work, if that, and then it was just like, okay, what do we do? And so I mean, just we did so much crazy, stupid, innocent, stupid, fun stuff, you know. But around 08, I met a guy named Mike Bodner, and he was an older guy, and late 08, I think we met, and we started talking in 09 about getting together. Mike was an old restaurateur. He was one of the original Wendy's franchisees. I think he had like the 11th or 14th ever Wendy's, and I knew that I didn't know anything what I was doing on running the business side of it. I could look at myself in the mirror and say, I'm proud of my food. I'm proud of my brand. I have no basis to be proud on how I'm running this. So I just had sales, and there was money. There was a little bit more money in the bank this week than there was last week.
Yeah.
And I was closed on Sundays, you know, for church and Titans games, and then Mondays I was closed, but I would come in and do my payroll for all 5 people. It'd take me like 2 hours to do freaking payroll, and you know, calculating taxes and all that, reporting it, and open Tuesday through Saturday. So anyway, Cliff Notes is I started talking to Mike, and he had helped Nick Pahakis at Jim and Nick's and his dad when before Mr. Jim died on putting systems around barbecue, which is really kind of to me, it was an oxymoron until I figured it out. And those systems have to do with cooking, but they also have to do with your facility, labor schedules, managing your cost of goods, your supply of food. It's 3 things: food, supply, and labor. Mm-hmm. And I had a cash register, like $99 cash register, and the first thing he told me was he was selling Aloha's, like POS, and he goes, you know who your other partners are? I said, I don't have any other partners. He goes, oh yeah, you do. You just don't know it. I said, what do you mean? And, you know, that was the basis of like him, like, you got a cash register. You have no way of tracking your cash. These stupid little Z reports aren't. He goes, somebody's taking $20 out of the till every night. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
You know, and so that relationship started, and he would come in a couple times a week with no strings attached and mentor me and say, okay, here's your homework assignment this week. First of all, I'll get you a POS. Okay, so I got one. Now let's identify all your raw materials. So I did that for a week. The next week he's like, okay, let's spend the next couple months writing the recipes. Okay, we did that. So I started building the structure to my database, for the POS, so that when you came in and ordered, when I was done with all that, when you came in and ordered a pulled pork sandwich, I was able to then just take a pencil to paper and mathematically figure out, okay, that's 4 ounces of pork I just sold. That's an ounce of slaw in the sandwich I just sold. That's a half ounce of sauce, and that's a bun. Bun cost 17 cents, but, you know, I just went on down the line. So we decided in 2000, I had outgrown the space, and there was a guy in Nolensville named Bill Tisano, who is my current landlord out there, and he was like, I'll build you a building over here. And so Bodner and I decided to just partner up.
Who was this guy that helped you out?
Mike Bodner?
Mike Bodner? Okay.
Yeah.
What's his story? What was he doing before this? How do you meet
He was a Wendy's franchisee.
Okay, that's right. You mentioned that. That's right.
So, well, he did other things, you know, but he had helped Jim and Nick's, and they grown into this, you know, they had like, I don't know, at the time, like 15 or something stores. And that was impressive that, you know, when I would talk to Nick, and Nick was like, yeah, we make this stuff from scratch and we do this. And it's like, how do you do that past one location and still hold on to your integrity about what you're doing without reheating and like bringing commissaries in, all that stuff that's just at a granular level? That's not in my DNA.
Yeah.
So Mike was like, I'll show you.
So why weren't you intimidated by Mike? Why weren't you threatened by Mike? I feel like a lot of people in that same scenario.
I'm not intimidated by anybody, and I don't mean that as like I'm something bad. I just don't. I think we're all just people, and I'm also not intimidated by myself to say I don't have the answer to this, man. Like, you know those old monikers you see like back in the 70s when Dad's driving the car and he's not going to use a map out of pride. That's not me.
Yeah.
Give me a map.
Yeah. It's okay to ask help. It's okay to take help.
It's okay to take help. Yeah. It's okay, because you don't have it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
So it did not intimidate me in the least. Matter of fact, I was thirsty doesn't even describe it, willing student, and the student always seeks the teacher.
Yeah.
That's very important. So Bodner just shows up and he's like talking to me about this stuff, and that it went from very informal to never got formal, but it got serious. Like, okay, see you next Tuesday. And here's what you do this. And he would work on his stuff over on the side, and I'd be over there like, okay, is this right? And be like, look at it. Yeah, that's right. You can see that, you know. So that went on. And so anyway, we ended up partnering in 2010. And I said the deal was he didn't buy into it. I didn't get any money. I gave him equity in return for mentorship.
Yeah.
And
he came on scene in 2007, you said, that summer? 2008. So I think, you know, it takes time to build trust, to build those relationships. You know, I think people sometimes rush into partnerships. Do you have any advice on partnerships and selecting partners? What was going through your mind? Why Mike was a good investment?
Yeah, we could do a whole series, you and I, on restaurant. But you know, Mike has been an incredible mentor.
Yeah.
Our partnership, things have evolved and things have grown. He ended up going and starting a hospitality group called Fresh Hospitality, which is partners with a few entities here in town, and kind of on the same basis of like, hey, I did this with I did this with my own folks at Wendy's, and I did this with Jim at Jim and Nick's, and then, you know, obviously Nick, and then I've done this with Tzatziki's, this Mediterranean. Say, now I got this Pat Martin kid, so they kind of formed.
Tzatziki's. I knew I had Tzatziki's on the show. I was like, that sounds so familiar.
He kind of ended up formalizing it, you know. And so anyway, we partnered, and I moved across the street in the new building, which was still small. It was only with the patio, it's 2,400 square feet, and that's where things got formal, and that's where I really put my skins on the wall, because we opened up. I was doing $14,000 a week in sales across the street. We thought we were going to open up. We wrote a sales projection for the first week together at $22,000. We opened up at $40,000, and I had no other managers. So that next 2 years was, it was boot camp. You know, like, and I always respect Mike, because Mike left me alone. He was only there when I needed. I had a question, he would do his best to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I'll give people advice on is that if you're going to partner with somebody who truly brings value to the table and knows their role.
Compliments you too, right?
Yeah. It's got to be a yin and a yang, right? You've got to find your weaknesses and find somebody who can help you with that. And sometimes that partner needs to go away after you've gained that weakness, after you've gained that, you've shored up that weakness you had, or they just continue to bring more stuff to the table. A lot of times people look at partners just for capital, and I'm going to tell you not to do that. I'm going to tell you that you need to look at partners that actually help you create more value.
Why don't look at them just as capital? Why is that dangerous?
Because it's an unhealthy marriage, right? So I've never taken a penny. You know, it's one thing that pisses me off is when you're partnered with a hospitality group. It's like, well, you got them to fall back on. But they don't have them to fall. They're not a bank, you know. And once you get into and their only role is to provide capital, I'm not saying it doesn't ever work out, but a lot of people are just romantic about the restaurant business. They just want to be in the freaking restaurant business. And they've got the money to do it, and they find this young cook over here, and they get him going, and then they go eat. You know, they fly out to Napa or they fly to France or whatever, and now they bring their ideas and they want to shove them on you. One thing I'll give Mike credit on, he never one time tried to change anything with Martin's. He just was like, you do what you do, and I'm here. I'm the old guy over here that's got a lot of answers. If you need them, I'm here.
Yeah. And so I love that. I love that approach. And reflecting back, some of the big things that have come out of the conversation is he taught you basically how to inventory your business, how to get your prime costs down, how to do menu engineering, right? So structure, exactly.
He taught me how to wrap systems and disciplines of financial structure.
Don't necessarily change the thing that's so special. You just look at it and say, how can we create repetition and consistency and order and structure around this to maintain it? Right? You don't want to change it. You want to maintain it. And you need systems to maintain it. But reflecting back at some of the biggest key pivotal moments that Mike taught you, the things that you would have never done if you didn't have him in your corner.
It's too many for me to answer that. There were just a lot of little things. Like it added up to this big thing. You know what I mean? Like it was like, for example, let's just take a labor schedule.
Okay.
There's 5 sections to a day. Yep. Open, lunch, the through, dinner, and close. Mm-hmm. Right? I got down, Mike was, how we call it time and motion. How long does it take for me to do my prep and manufacture what I've got to do to open up for lunch? Well, I literally got a stopwatch and timed it. I timed how long it took me to go to the bank, drop the deposit off. And then backed into how many people do I need to execute this? Yeah. Right? So that's just one example of that right there, you know, of just, looking at voids, comps, you know, like every night. Like the unsexy stuff is the stuff that makes people successful in restaurants. Mm-hmm. They get into it because it's sexy. A lot of chefs and pit masters get into it, if they're being honest with themselves, because it's a vehicle for them to be more popular or even in their mind famous. That's a horrific reason to get into the restaurant business. Okay, but you know the fact is that you've got to do the unsexy stuff. The unsexy stuff is what makes it work.
What's the unsexiest thing that you do really well?
I love operations now. Yeah. Like I really love tearing into food costs. I love tearing into a labor schedule. Mentoring and teaching kids or teaching line cooks. Burger cannot be packed too tight. It's got to be packed loose so it can stay in contact with the flat and caramelize rather than lift up and steam. It's all these. I love all that stuff. And I think that a lot of people just gets in their way of being, you know, Joe Blow Pitmaster, blah blah blah, was on, you know, this Food Network, you know, and it's the unsexy things that make it.
So what is it about the operations, developing the operations? It's like the game of business, right? And I can tell from your story that you probably have a little bit of a competitive edge because of the basketball, right? Or just that idea.
I'm very competitive. Yeah. But I've matured. I used to be competitive against other people. I truly, literally just look at myself in the mirror every day. I don't give a shit what everybody else is doing.
It sounds like what drew you to the industry was the love for the food, the love of being seen and appreciated for the thing you do, for making people happy, right? And getting that recognition for doing barbecue well, and then he helped you understand the game of business. And he gamified it for you with the systems and doing.
Yeah, things. It was like going and getting another degree to kind of help you round out. I mean, I've always been a good leader. I've always been the guy that was willing to take the shot, the technical foul. I've never been one to shy away from it. And just having those systems kind of shored everything up, you know, because I was proud of my food. I was proud of my brand. The thing I had to shore up was I had to learn how to be a businessman and how to operate this. And Mike helped me do that. And around 2012-ish, 13, I didn't get into this to like grow a bunch of restaurants either. And even sitting here with you right now, I don't have some number in mind out there that I want to grow. I grow them opportunistically, but another opportunity came along and we opened up a second one. And that was a whole nother learning curve. That
was in 2012.
Yeah, that was something that Mike had not complete, but fairly, you know, limited. That was just getting up and getting in the ring and getting your face punched in and figuring out how to stop this guy from hitting you in the face. You know, that's not something Mike could hold my hand in the ring and be like, okay, now, you know, bob and weave right here and come around the left and jab him in the side, and then hit the right on the chin. So, yeah, and then I just was really maturing then at that point in my career.
So this is 6 years in. You're, what, 33, 32, 34 when you got started. So you're almost 40 at this point. This is when you're going from 1 to 2 locations. What was the biggest challenge of going from 1 to 2 locations, and how did you overcome those challenges?
People.
Yeah.
That's where I learned the lesson that the human capital, human asset, and investing in that, your employees, is the most important thing to grow.
How'd you learn that lesson?
Hard.
Yeah.
The hard way. Just turnover, losing people. You're worried about your hourly wage. Like, I can't pay this guy another 50 cents an hour. Because a lot of people, employees have also, you know, another thing that's, in my opinion, screwed up about the restaurant business is that 95% of everybody gets promoted, they get promoted on tenure.
Yeah.
You know, Bobby's the bar manager. I'm just a bartender. Pat's a bartender. You know, Joe's the GM, and Bobby came in high. Bobby, you're fired. Well, what does Joe do? Does Joe go through a recruiting firm and try to find a bar manager that has shown that he can manage his costs? And no, he doesn't do that. Pat, you've been here for 5 months. You should be the bar manager. Whether Pat's ready to be the bar manager or not.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that tenure thing through promotion on that end, and then employees, hourlies, feel like, okay, I've been here 6 months, I hadn't gotten a raise. Hey, I want a 25-cent raise. And people say, you know, they start getting backed into a corner like, oh, gosh, I got to give him a raise or he's going to leave. Well, I would rather overpay a little bit now. This is the lesson I learned. But let me tell you something. You ain't getting another raise until you create more value.
How do they know?
I tell all my people here, no, don't come ask me for a raise. Come ask me to be trained on something else so you can be more valuable.
Okay.
Then I'll give you a raise.
Okay. Do you have that? Is that built? Like, how do you track that? How do you know that they're actually bringing more value?
Well, the more things they know how to do, and then you take in just common sense stuff like they show up every day.
Yeah.
They don't, you know the people who give you the BS excuses, you know, even if they're not trying to be malicious about it, you know, and this, I judge everybody my first impression on their gait, how they walk. If they walk with like, okay, A to B, B to C, B to D, but if they're A to B and then I'm going home here and A to and B to C, that freaking guy's out. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I look, it's how they carry themselves.
Yeah. But back to this lesson.
And do they care? Do they care about the brand? Do they go out and drink with their buddies and they're wearing Martin's Barbecue at the bar, or do they go out and drink with their buddies and they got to get that Martin's Barbecue shirt off? When they're proud of where they work, they won't think about going out with their work clothes on.
I want to talk about how you make people proud of the brand. I want to get into that, but I want to kind of sew up this last lesson real quick because I think it's huge. Is that like you have to give people. What you shared with me reminds me of Nick Cirillo in Nick's Pizza up in Evanston up by Chicago, and that idea that you have to basically give people like it's like you don't just ask for a raise. You show me, like you give them. You can even paint that picture. You learn how to do these 5 things, and you hit that point. You take the test or whatever, and you show me that you're competent in these 5 things. You create tiers, right? And then I think he even goes as far as giving people different hats. That when you reach a certain tier, you get a new hat to know that you can handle those different skills. I mean, I don't know if you did anything.
You have no
like
idea
that.
how bad all of us want people. There is so much opportunity in life. I don't care if it's a restaurant business. When I took my job with Nations Bank, there was this funny, eccentric sales manager that was across the trading desk named George Ellison. And George would there was hazing back then, like, okay, eat a habanero powder. Here's $5,000. If you vomit, you don't get it, like stuff like that. But on Fridays when everybody would go to the bar, George would ask me to run an errand for him or whatever. And I would do it. I knew the game. I was smart enough, just from sports. You knew there was some hazing with seniors. Well, that's kind of what was happening. And George actually complimented me one day. He said, you know what the problem with people is? He goes, if all you ever do is what you're getting paid to do, that's all you're ever going to do. So, doing the extra thing and just caring, man. Some people care and some people don't. And it's hard to find the ones that care.
Yeah.
And that's just it. There's no magic science to that. If there was, I would have 1,000 restaurants open if I could solve that problem, But
I think this is a good transition to that next little bit, like that you have this brand, that you've created pride in this brand, that you create culture, and it sounds like one of the things that you were really proud of early on was developing the brand, because you did that on your own, right? Developing the brand.
I developed that brand in my dorm room 30 years ago.
Yeah.
In my head, I had it.
So what's going on within the four walls of your restaurants that people have the sense of pride to work for Martin's, that they've created that culture of pride?
A lot of it comes from one-on-one time with me, which I don't know that I'll ever do a good enough job of doing that, especially now we've got the amount of employees that we have. It's really hard for me. At the time when I just had one restaurant, I ruled it with an iron fist, and I don't apologize for it. I wasn't easy to work for, but I wasn't a jerk. I wasn't inhumane. I didn't call people names and that, but I've punched some doors, and, we had a drive-through on that restaurant, on that building, and it's 2.5-minute ticket times, and they got to 4 minutes, and I come in and I'm just like, what do you do? They're just cutting corners. They're getting sloppy. And it's just, I use coaches a lot as how I approach things, and, as I grew, I realized I had to change my management and leadership style to still hold firm, but to become more of a teacher. And really it was a learning lesson for me to say, you know what, your job is to win the battle. Your job is to win the war. Your job isn't to win every battle. You're going to lose some battles. So don't get all wound up about every employee that doesn't do something the right way. So I quickly kind of deciphered, like, okay, what are the things that I'm going to explode at and not apologize for? And that is, we got these spare ribs. They cook for 6 hours, okay, 210 degrees. You take them out at 4.5 because we're 86 spares, but a customer's sitting over here and they want them. You do that a second time, you will not work here anymore.
Yeah.
You tell them, we don't have them ready yet. They're not ready.
Yeah.
That is what I'm going to say. There is no bend. Same kind of thing with the facility and how we treat our guests. But, I started realizing, like, so-and-so's late. Instead of getting mad, I'd sit down and say, why are you late? And then you start finding out, you start learning how to empathize more. You start finding out that people have personal problems, or they don't have a car to get to work, or their car's janky or whatever. And so that's where I really started learning to bend.
Yeah.
And become more empathetic.
So in operating this first location, you're basically imprinting your values onto your people. You're recreating yourself and your people with your standards and setting those standards.
That's another great thing you bring up, because I wanted everybody to be Pat, and they're not going to be. Not because I'm awesome. It has nothing to do with that. It's because they're not the owner. And when you're the owner and it's your dream and you have skin in the game, you have a completely different view of something.
Yeah, that's a big lesson to learn.
To expect that from an hourly employee, I don't care if you're paying them $25 an hour, or $7 an hour. To expect that is just flat out unrealistic. And I learned that somewhere around 2013, that I had to start changing and quit having those false expectations.
So what changed? What did you start doing to change to keep that level of culture that you've established, but that to not dilute that culture, but also to
I hired a guy. This guy I went to college with named Chris Kaiser. He was from West Tennessee, and he knew the culture of West Tennessee whole-hog, which is the club-footed stepchild in barbecue. Everybody talks about the Carolinas, and because that's what everybody knows. And you see whole hog, you're like, well, Eastern North Carolina or South Carolina, and then there's this group of us over here in West Tennessee that, hey, we cook whole hog too, And Kaiser knew that culture, and so bringing him, he was also a restaurant manager, so bringing him in helped me not have to put out every single fire. And then other managers started, as we kind of grew, and I hate to say the word mushrooming, but we started widening out at the top a little bit. I had more people to talk to ask advice from. I ask advice from my employees, hourlies. I'm like, what do you think about? What do you know, anything? You know, I don't have, my ego is not that big that I can't hear their answers. So having Kaiser was another big step for me, you know.
I think you have to point out too that you guys are getting really good acclaim at this point. Like, you know, like you're being nationally recognized. You're doing something really unique, whole hog, right? I feel like that's that in itself is appealing. People want to be a part of that. It's exciting, right? There's something to be proud of. The approach that you're taking. I think the fact that you're getting national acclaim, the fact that you're doing something cool and interesting, you're attracting onto yourself good people in general. And then I think that is worth mentioning. And then just keeping them and then being generous through your knowledge. You have these standards, you have these expectations, but you're also super generous with your information. That's a lesson you got from Harold Thomas, you know, and you paid that forward. And you show that you care. And I think that's the other thing that you haven't come right out and said yet, but it's evident in everything that you do and the stories I've read about you, is that you care about your people. When you care about your people, they'll care about you.
That's true.
Right? So you made this pivot, you said, around 2013, where you just realized that not everybody was going to treat it like they owned it, but you also started scaling, so you're creating more opportunity, right? So get into that part of it and how you started. In 2013, you went from 1 to 2 locations, or 2012, but you're also now growing, so there's no ceilings anymore for your people, or there's a higher ceiling.
There's a higher ceiling. You can't franchise barbecue. You can franchise barbecue. So it's a misnomer too. A lot of people use the word franchise with if you've got more than one location. Franchise is a specific type of growth model that you would use. It's basically, when you franchise, you're renting your brand to somebody. Here's the business model. Here's the sign and decor. Pay me a royalty fee, which is quote unquote for, you know, street terms is rent, and pay me 5% off your gross sales, and I'll come in a couple times a year and make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't equate to barbecue well, because the barbecue is not a recipe that you just set it in, right? It's a skill set. And so to grow, I have to create opportunities for people in order for them to be a joint venture partner with me somewhere. Like, you know, got a guy down in Birmingham, my store in Birmingham. This guy's a partner in the store.
So basically, we have a few minutes. I want to wrap up this idea of basically you only grow. So a lot of this comes up a lot in the show. It's like, when do you know it's time to scale? Cash flow and people. And then when you have those things, then when you grow, you're just providing opportunity. Like you're giving outlets for your people to go, because they're going to go off and do their own thing eventually anyway, but you have to give them the opportunity for growth. How do you do that within house? How do you create these opportunities for your pit masters? Because I know you to open a Martin's, you can't just approach. You can't just be approached. You can't approach Pat and say, "I want to open a Martin's."
Absolutely
There's more to it.
Nope. You got to work here for a long time. Like I've got to have just a intangible faith that I'm going to show you how to run this business as a kitchen manager, and then you get a promotion to a GM. I'm going to show you. You know, a lot of people think it's just about learning how to cook barbecue. That is not. That's not that's easy. That's not quote the easy part, but that's a year of reps. I can write down a recipe or a procedure right now for you to go cook a whole hog. Yeah. But then you've actually got to go cook that hog well, right? It's like I can show you how to ride a bicycle, but you don't just get on a bicycle as people, okay, I got to put the right foot on the pedal and push it forward. I'm good. I'm riding down the road. It just doesn't work that way. Well, that's the barbecue. That's the cooking side. Then the running the business, how to be a businessman. Basically what I'm trying to do is what Mike did with me now. I'm teaching them the things that I was taught within my own house to create an opportunity for me to open another store. And that is just very intangible, man. There's not like a set checklist of like, oh, you know, here's all things you can do. Okay, I can't argue with you. We got to open up another one. Yeah. Because you can't measure and checklist heart and desire. You know, if you're in Knoxville and you've got a Martin's Barbecue that we've opened up together and you're living there, and John, the pit guy, you know, doesn't come in at night, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to get in a car and go down there. Yeah, or if you're not, I'm not going to partner with you. Right. So I got to figure that out before we ever buy. If you get to that point, it's too late.
Have you ever had somebody who's come through your program who's what?
Who has been one of those people? No.
I'm really curious now if you know what I was going to ask. Who's gone on to open their own place? who's taken all of your lessons on how to cook whole hog?
No. I got one. There's one guy that I hope he does it. His name's Hal. He's very smart, and he wants to open up his own place.
It's not Hal Holden, is it?
Hal Holdenbase? No.
No, okay.
No, it's a guy named Hal Wilson Nichols. Okay. But he wants to do something on his own, and I hope he does because I'm proud of him. He's very smart.
So I think that's what I'm getting into is this idea. I think a lot of people are afraid to share their knowledge because they're afraid they're going to open a place next door and compete. But you seem to be so generous with your knowledge and the way to how to run, not just on how to cook a whole hog, but how to run business. What's that inner dialogue look like with basically that maybe it's a fear that they might go on and open a place down the street and compete with you?
I don't know how to answer that for you because I've never had that fear. And you're spiting yourself because you have a choice to make. You either share what you know so they can execute your brand, or you share part of it because you're insecure, and basically it means you have a large ego.
Yeah.
And you're afraid somebody's going to outdo you. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah. I've loved this conversation. I want to make sure we leave room for the speed round. So before we wrap it up, I just want to ask you, is there anything we haven't gotten to, anything you want to talk about that's near and dear to your heart right now that you think the industry needs to hear?
Well, maybe not there's a lot of stuff for the industry, a lot of things that I try to give. I do events and all kinds of people reaching out like, hey, I've been wanting to do this and I love your story. And I literally tell them, it's the best thing I ever did. Don't do it. and it's just because you cook great food does not mean you need to be in the restaurant business, because that's a whole nother conversation. This cooking, you can cook some of the best stuff that's ever been made, but it has nothing. This is a whole nother conversation when you've got to do it 5-6 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. It's very, very, very dangerous, the restaurant business, because as you know, very few restaurants actually do make it, and for a variety of reasons, not just whether they're well capitalized or not. I didn't borrow enough money, by the way. I had to go back and get another addition of my line.
And that was $160,000 you got the first time, right?
$65,000.
$65,000. Okay.
That was it. So, I would really encourage people that if you really want to go open up a restaurant, and this is where it really stops. They don't want to hear this advice, but it's true advice. Go work in a restaurant.
Yeah. And
actually, go work in a chain restaurant, because you're not going to learn systems and disciplines from a mom and pop store usually.
Yeah.
Right.
That's changing, which is a good thing. I think people are starting to adopt it, but I agree with what you're saying. You're more likely going to.
Go learn basic. Go work for a casual dining, or go work for friggin' McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And if your ego is too big to do that, then you definitely don't need to be doing this.
Absolutely.
Because you have to be in a point to where you're like, okay, just like I was. I've got my food. I've got that shored up. I know what I want to do with my brand. I don't know how to run the business. And if you don't know how to run the business, it doesn't matter how great a food you cook. You're probably going to go out of business, and you're going to lose every single freaking thing you probably have.
Absolutely, man. Great
and it
stuff.
Is so dangerous.
Yeah. And this is the last.
And I don't want to keep people from doing it. They should, but you got to understand, to do it, I want you to follow your dream.
Yeah.
But make sure you've checked. Make sure you've equipped yourself for success. Yeah. And they just skip over this stuff over here because that's the unsexy stuff.
Yeah. Restaurant Unstoppable's mission is almost to talk people out of it. Like, I'm here to empower people. I'm here to inspire. It should be to inspire, empower, and talk people out of opening restaurants. And I'm happy that you're saying that, because it is alluring. It is sexy, like you say, but there's a lot of realities that you just don't see. And you have to love everything about this business.
Your holidays ain't your holidays anymore.
No.
Your Saturdays aren't your Saturdays anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's a lifestyle change, massive, that people don't think about.
So on that note of change, the last question I ask all my guests before going to the speed round is the mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. How have you changed? How have you transformed over the past 14 years now? Who's the Pat today versus the Pat back then?
Oh, it's more of an old man Pat now. I definitely don't get as wound up about a lot of the things that I used to get wound up about. I love teaching so much. I really, truly enjoy just going in and putting an apron on. And I don't get an opportunity to do it as much as I like to. I didn't get into the business to be what I am personally right now. I didn't get into business to be a chairman and CEO of my company and da-da-da. I got into business to cook.
Yeah.
So I love getting on the line when I've got a window, usually on like a Friday night. I usually try to go out to Nolensville or one of my stores, but I still go to Nolensville a lot. It's the OG, it's the original. And just go back there on the line. I love sitting on a freaking 5-gallon bucket on the line, in a kitchen, in the bowels of a kitchen, and just shit's hitting the fan, and it's like that. That's for me with ADD. That is like my warm comfort place.
That's south from here, right? The original?
Huh?
The original location, south from here?
South?
South.
Yeah, south. It's your 5 o'clock, about 25 minutes. But
I know where I'm going tonight.
You know, and so I love getting in there and just being like, hey, let me show you how. Don't cut those ribs, you know, or whatever. I mean, anything. Just working with them, putting an arm around them, like that's just that's what I really enjoy.
All right, we're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor? A habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
You have to give a crap. Yes.
What is your biggest weakness?
Oh, there's a lot of those. I will overanalyze and go too deep on an issue, and because I want it to be so right that it ends up bogging me down.
Tunnel vision.
It's tunnel vision. I'm not as bad as I used to be on it because I've been aware of that weakness for a while now, but it's still there. I don't think it'll ever completely go away, but you know, I will spend. I'm way past one sentence here, though.
You're fine.
But I'll spend too much time on something sometimes.
I love it. What is your biggest challenge today? Current challenge.
People.
Yeah. How are you overcoming that?
You just when you find that answer, will you let me know?
Yeah, just generally finding people.
Yeah, you just get up another day and you just try to find them. I will say this, and this will be a little bit more than one sentence, is a lot of times those people are right under your nose. Mm-hmm. If you get to know your people better and you're like, you know, you're looking over here at so-and-so, the cashier, and you got to get to know them and know their skill sets, because it's a lot easier you want to bring people up from within, and don't just cast them off like, oh, they're 26 and they like to still go out and party and all. Well, give them a reason to change to change what's important to them, and maybe they'll party. Okay, fine, go out and party. But if you got to be here at 7 a.m., you don't ever know if their ambition is strong enough that they will change their structure in their life in order to put their career ahead of their partying. So it's just things like that.
What is one thing you're looking for when you're building your team, when you're growing your team? What are you looking for? A question you ask.
On the front end or somebody that's already working for me?
Front
end. There's a couple things, actually. I want to see their stability where they worked before. You know, if they worked for 2 or 3 places before, I'm interested. If you worked for all these other places and you've got a different job every 6 months to a year at another restaurant, you're probably going to leave in 6 months. Yeah. Training dollars are 3 times more expensive. If I'm paying you $10 an hour, it costs me $30 to train you. Yeah. So if I'm going to piss away $30 an hour to train you and then you're going to leave 6 months, you know what I'm saying? So that's a lot of trying to hedge against that. But I just talk to them about what they did, sports or whatever, and try to find something in their life that they had heart in. It's all heart, man.
I love it. Share one code of conduct or core value you teach your team. This is a way to be, a way to act within your restaurant.
Well, I've already talked about like dotting the I's and crossing the T's and all that. I would definitely say, you know your job. I'm going to train you. And I'm gonna handle my end. I'm gonna train you, so know your job and do your job.
What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So this may be front of house, something that you do to go above and beyond to serve your guests.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I try very much. I really do look to a lot of the classical chef-driven fine dining restaurants for our service in the front, and a lot of it, when somebody hears that right off the gates, they're gonna be like, "What, are you kidding me?" But a lot of it is little things that you would never notice, such as if you're walking to the bathroom and I'm a runner and we're going to meet, I stop and step aside for you to pass me. I don't try to squeeze by you, and little stuff like that. So it's always looking a customer in the eye and smiling. Yes. They are always right. They can be wrong after we've made them feel like they were right, but and a lot of times they are wrong. But
they don't even know they're wrong.
No, they're right. You have to go so deep. You know, if we miss an order up like in the drive-through, I won't do it if they're 50 miles away. But if they're 5-6 miles away, we're having an employee drive to their house and bring them the whole meal that we just screwed up.
That's
and it
awesome.
may be a missing sauce, but we gotta make it right.
I mean, in that moment, that might cost you whatever to replace the meal, the time to send the employee out there. It might cost you what, $50 if you add it all up. But what's that going to be in the long run when you show them that you care? Like that's going to pay for itself time and time again.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely, I love it. What is one book that's a must read to make us a better person or a restaurant owner?
Oh, that's a good one. I would definitely Charlie Trotter's book on service. Definitely Danny Meyer's book.
Sitting at the table.
Yep, Setting the Table. I know Danny fairly well, and that's just I give that book to everybody. But I will tell you, as far as people are concerned, the 1 Minute Manager. It's old.
Classic.
It's a classic. It will never not be applicable, and it's short.
Yeah. It's like an hour or less on audio, I want to say.
Yeah.
What is one service that you've outsourced to? So this isn't necessarily a technology that you've implemented, but like something that you don't do well, or somebody does better than you if you outsource it.
Well, part of the things that Mike built with Fresh was that too. Okay, we have accounting, we have technology over here, so I outsource my accounting. I don't have. I'm getting to a point where I'm about to stop that. I'm big enough now that I'm going to hire my own CFO and bring them in house on salary. But
how do you know you're big enough? What's that point look like?
Just when you look at how much money what does a CFO make? Okay. So CFO may make $120,000 a year. Okay, like a CFO, not somebody who wants like a CFO. There's CFOs that make far more money than that. But where I am right now, I kind of know the industry, about $120,000 a year. Well, I'm paying $120,000 a year to outsource it. You know what I mean? Or so when I'm there, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I was at 100. I could have done it. Like it's another $20,000. Well, but that having a good accountant. That's another piece of advice I'll give you. Don't ever hire a bookkeeper.
Yeah. Because
they're $60 an hour. Hire the accountant.
Right.
It'll save you a lot of headaches.
So what's the service you outsource to do your accounting before going to the CFO? Can you is there a service that you use for your accounting?
Yeah, I have a guy named Todd Mormon who basically does this as a third-party service, and he is my CFO, and he's a dang good one too.
Do you have the name of the business? It's the point of this question is to refer.
Well, it's within it's part of Fresh's services
gotcha,
that they have.
Gotcha.
So it's Fresh Accounting or whatever,
Gotcha.
But
now Fresh Services, you have to be invited into that, or is that
you have to be? I think that's how they do it. You got to be they have to be involved in some form or fashion for them to.
So the next question I have for you is, what is one technology that you're leveraging within your business that's had a huge impact on communication, efficiency, profitability, anything along those lines? So an example of this would have been a POS system 10 years ago when Mike first came on scene. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are some technologies out there, but there's nothing that's jumped up with some huge delta that's made it oh gosh, this is the new next best thing for me. Mm-hmm. There are for other people, but we're writing some. I don't even know if you would really call it code, but I'm trying to dive into my inventories more and try to figure out using Benford's curve to dial that in. We have prep sheets every day that they have to do. So now we're auditing that. I'm really big into audit, not so I can be a cop and bust you, but so I can teach you. It's kind of like, I go to the doctor, and I use this analogy a lot, and I go to the doctor, and my doctor's like, Pat, you're 252 pounds, you're fat. You got to lose weight. All right, doc, I'm going to lose weight. What do you want me to do? Well, I want you to drink a lot of water, fish, limit your carbs, and I want you to work out an hour a day on the treadmill. Okay, I get the fish and the low carbs, but what's this treadmill? What's treadmill going to do for me? Well, it's going to burn calories and stuff like that. Well, I don't still understand. Why don't you just shut up, Pat, and get on the dadgum treadmill, come back in 6 months, and let's weigh you and see if you lost weight. Because the doctor knows if you actually do that, you're going to lose weight. Well, it's also with boot camp. Guys that go in the military, they learn those disciplines. Well, these disciplines, I know this is getting away from your technology, but it is rudimentary technology. Just do it anyway, and when you do it enough, you're going to realize that it works. Yeah. And then you'll start applying it.
Yeah.
It's dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
You mentioned Benson's number, and I think that's the first time it's ever been mentioned on the show. And I watched a documentary recently on that number and how it just repeats. Or is it Benson's curve?
Curve.
But I think it's tied to a number, right?
It's tied to like 1 through 10, and 30% of the time, a 1 will be the leading number, and then 26% of the time a 2.
So like the majority of all numbers are like 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Yeah.
And then as the higher you go up, the less likely it is
That's
to
right.
be. I mean, I could do a whole episode on that, but like specifically, like how are you looking at that number? I know a lot of governments use this number. It's like a secret number, people call it, right?
Yeah.
So like, how is that significant within the world of
well, I'm kind of figuring it out. It's somewhat new. The guy Hal I was telling you about is actually who I've asked to help me figure it out. But we've already applied it to inventories, and it was like staggeringly, like, you know, it was a while back. It was staggering. Like you can absolutely see the curve.
Yeah.
And so what you're trying to find is inefficiencies.
It's like the 80-20 rule.
That's
like focus on that 20%, but where's the 20% is what you're trying to figure out.
Yeah, and that's impossible to answer because you have so many raw materials they're counting, right? But you just start going down the list, and you're not trying to find malicious inefficiencies. It's just human nature. You go and you're like, oh, that's you know, there's a 1/10 left in that. Well, there's your 1.
Yeah.
You know, there's this mayonnaise right here. Some people count quarters, half, 3/4 full. I count tenths, you know, or want to. So there's a 1/10 there. So, you know, there's a 1/10. Well, maybe it's not a 1/10. Maybe it's really 20%.
Got you.
So you're trying to go down and just find those inefficiencies, just keep tightening it in, because the adage in the restaurant business is if you want to create wealth, you have to do it counting your pennies.
Yeah, if you find anybody who makes progress in connecting the dots with where Benson comes up in the restaurant, is it Benson or Benford? Benford, thank you. Let me know, because I'd love to dive into that topic. I think it's fascinating.
Well, we can do it again another time.
I'd love that, man. I'd love that. And this is the last question before we wrap up. It's a doozy, so get ready for it. I get a lot of head shakes at this one, so prepare yourself. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be? It's a tough one.
Do all the little things.
1.
Smile and be very, very, very nice with your customer base.
2.
And treat your people better than you treat yourself.
3. I've loved this conversation, Pat. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. So who is somebody that you respect and admire in this industry and you believe would make a great guest mentor like you've made for us today?
A guest mentor for me or a guest mentor
for the show, for like what you're doing, somebody to sit in your seat right now, who's somebody that you would respect and admire, and listen to the episode if I got them on the show. Call them out to be a future guest on the show.
There's a lot of those, man. There is a lot of those. I'd probably say Billy Durney. I'd say Billy, or maybe a Sam Jones.
Billy, Sam, look out. I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
Is there more? I mean,
no, there's more. I mean,
here's how I find my future guests. It makes my job easier, and there's a filter to keep the good people on the show.
Is it just barbecue people, or
no? It's everybody. It's the world of hospitality and restaurants.
Oh gosh, there's so many names now I can't even think of all the names. But you know, there's a lot of young guys I'm trying to work with. You know, they're the ones who are stepping on the brake or the gas, but they know I'm here to help them in any way. I have no secrets. And, you know, I would definitely say like an Elliot Moss over in North Carolina. I don't work with Elliot that much, but like Zach Parker back in West Tennessee and Matt Horn out in Oakland.
I mean, you've already been so generous with the names. That's a lot of names. So thank you very much for sharing those names. We'll look into those folks, try to get them on the show. And how can we connect with you if we were inspired by your story, if we are interested in barbecue, whole hog specifically, and we want to come join your team, you're growing right now, what's the best way to connect?
For a job?
Yeah, for a future.
Go online and fill out an application. We're looking for them.
And that's your website, which I believe.
That's usually code for I really don't care if you average it, but that's not true. In restaurants, it has to start with an application process.
You have to feed them into the funnel, for sure. I understand the process, right? The game of business. So that's Martin's Barbecue. So Martin's
BBQjoint.com.
BBQjoint.com to find it. And I think there might be a way for you guys to connect right there on the site.
Or you can go on Instagram. Mine is Pitmaster Pat, or you can go to Martin's BBQ.
Yeah, beautiful.
And send a direct message.
Pat, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
And I know you're in pain right now, so I really do appreciate you coming out on a rainy morning to be here, to share your story, to share your knowledge. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.